Hi, I'm Kelli Paddon, and with me today is Salina Derish. As you probably know, the federal election is coming up on April 28th, which will be your chance to vote. And so today in studio, we have the candidate for the Federal Green Party here to talk a little bit so that we can get to know her, get to know what she's all about, and remind you again how important it is to vote on April 28th. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So for people who don't know you, I've had the pleasure of meeting you before and being in your store. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So my name is Salina Derish, like you said, and I own a zero waste grocery store, which I opened in 2018. I do a bunch of other mostly environmental related initiatives. I have a compost company that offsets all of our carbon emissions for the business, and the founding director and president of PIC Eco Zero Waste Society, which is less active right now than I would like, but the whole point of it is to help support cleanup initiatives. So I do some diving and clean up garbage from
Free diving, right?
Free diving, yes.
Yeah.
So not scuba. Hold my breath and dive down, not super deep, but Cultus Lake around the shoreline. I was at Harrison over the weekend, and it's actually quite expensive to do. Like, you go to do a cleanup and you're paying for your fuel and you're paying for parking, plus there's your equipment. So the idea is eventually to help support some of those volunteers in the costs. That is the long-term goal. For right now, it's just about building awareness that these cleanups are happening and finding people who can come help with ground crew, those types of things. So, but like I said, that's been a little bit inactive recently because I've been busy.
Busy, just a little bit.
Yeah, just a bit busy.
Yeah.
And then I'm also one of the directors for the Downtown Chilliwack Community Market. So it's a market that supports food security, and it is a BC Farmers Market Association market. So we are coupon recipients.
That's right.
So we have put, I think we're at just over $100,000 worth of coupons into community members' hands. And what that means is that they can go and buy fresh local produce from the market. So fresh food is getting into the houses of people who have, troubles accessing local, good quality produce, and all of the money ends up in the hands of the farmers. So we're supporting our local agriculture and supporting people with barriers to food security. So it's something that I've been part of for 5 years, and it's something that I absolutely love. It's a very near and dear to my heart project, and there's several other directors there. I don't do that alone. I'm grateful for the support of so many other community members. And yeah, that's kind of what I've been up to lately. But yeah, that's...
So you live in Chilliwack with your family, right?
I do, yes.
Okay. And have you been here a long time?
I have lived in Chilliwack for 11 years.
Yes.
Yeah. I grew up in Langley, so not far from here. And moved a little bit further out to the Aldergrove area, and then ended up out in Chilliwack in around 2013. And I just love it. When I first moved to Chilliwack, I lived up on the eastern hillsides in the mountains and just fell in love with this place. And even though I grew up in Langley and lived there longer, I really didn't put roots down until I moved to Chilliwack. I'm not sure if it was because I had young children, and you do need to root yourself in your community when you have young kids. Yeah. But I really found my home here and just fell in love with this place. I can't imagine ever living anywhere else.
I completely agree. And it sounds like you've had a little bit of taste of all over the valley. You're working in food security, you're working in, making sure to reduce carbon footprint and cleanups and eco work, green work, right?
Green
so that's fantastic. All right, so now you have stepped up, raised your hand to be the federal green candidate. So tell me a little bit about how did that come about? What was the decision making and conversation around that?
Yeah, so in and around February, actually end of January, the local Green Party EDC reached out and asked me if I would sit down and have a conversation with them. At the time, I didn't think I was going to go into that conversation, and agree to be a federal candidate for an election. But after having talked to, it was Deborah Suter, who I know through other community events, yeah, we just had such a great conversation, and I was honest with her. I said, I've got a lot going on. Like, what are you needing from me? And she said, we just really want people to have a choice that represents the Green Party, and somebody who really represents Chilliwack. Green Party is a smaller federal party, and sometimes they have a hard time filling all of putting a candidate in every riding, essentially. So having to have a candidate from another community is not ideal, and finding somebody who can do it here locally is a challenge, because I think people are pretty intimidated by it. And I thought about it, and I told her, I'm like, I only have the capacity for so much, but I'll give it everything that I can. And everything that I do in my life is already like very entrenched in Green Party values. I've always voted Green Party unless I was, voting strategically in an election where I thought that was going to really, make a difference, like in the provincial election. I voted NDP, but any other time I'm typically voting Green Party anyways. So, after thinking about it and talking to Deborah about like what the expectations were, I was like, like, why not? I've always given back to the community. I've always, been in and out of leadership roles. I love to meet new people. I love talking to people. I don't have an expectation of getting elected, at the end of April, but at the end of the day, getting to talk to more people who live in Chilliwack is something that I enjoy. So, this is just another opportunity for me to try to give back to this community in some way. And I think that the Green Party is just like, the value alignment is so good. Like, I obviously knew about the environmental initiatives, but looking deeper into the Green Party policies, there's just alignment on so many levels. I think that it represents me well, and I represent it well, so it just seemed like an easy fit.
That's fantastic. And when it comes to working with the party, I know as well how important values alignment is. So I hear what you're saying about, a different goal than maybe the seat. But really appreciate, I think it's really important that people have a choice. And so you having put your name forward and stepped forward for this is incredibly important.
Thank you.
So thank you for that. And I know it's no small feat. Yeah. Whether you're running a lean campaign or a very robust campaign, it's an incredible amount of work. So I think that one of the questions that I hoped I get to ask all the candidates is, what is the message that you think resonates the deepest with you from the party that you would want people to know, I am the Green candidate because this is what I stand for?
Yeah, thank you. That's such a good question. There's so many things that I can say about the Green Party, but really one of my favorite things about the Green Party federally is that they don't, there's no whip. So you don't have to vote according to certain policies that they put forth. So there's that flexibility to really vote with your conscience and vote with your community, which I think is so important, as an MP. And obviously, like I said, I have some goals for the election. I would love to get 10% of the vote, right? I know that, here in Chilliwack, the federal elections are pretty landslide type results. So far. Who
knows the future?
Who knows?
Everything is shifting. The whole ground is shifting politically across North America right now. So,
true. Yeah, this is true. And I think that, Chilliwack is ready for change, and we're ready for somebody who shows up for their community. And that's something that's really important to me. And like you said, even if you're running a lean campaign, it is so much work. And one of the things that I have found is a lot of that work is responding to people who message. And I try to respond thoughtfully and fully to everybody who has been asking me questions about, what my policy, what my thoughts are and what the Green Party policies are, because I think that is something that I have heard and that I have felt, place where I felt frustration with our, local MP, is that there's less engagement with the community than I think people would like to see. So engaging with people when they do have those questions to me is really important because, if something big really shifted and I was elected and I was the MP for Chilliwack-Hope, I would want people to know that I'm here and I'm accessible and I want to answer your questions and I want to meet you face to face. And I think that that's really important, that whoever ends up in that position, after April 28th, really shows up for the community. This is such a great place, and I think it should be an honor to represent Chilliwack and Hope, and all the way up to Boston Bar. And whoever's doing that should be responding and should be taking the time to get to know the constituents. I think that's just, no matter who it is, that should be priority number one.
Yeah. No, I think that's fantastic. Getting to know people, getting to know the people in your constituency, not being stuck in echo chambers. That's really important.
It is.
But almost impossible during a campaign. Because the people that you're interacting with are the people who are aware of you, that you're able to break through to. So it can be very difficult. But I think some of the things that I heard and I've heard is a lot of questions and confusion about what happens at the different levels of government. So whether people are voting federally or provincially or municipally,
yes,
or the regional districts, a lack of clarity around who is responsible and accountable for what. So is there one issue federally that really cemented for you that, this is time away from your family, this is time away from your business. It can be very stressful, and it can create a target sometimes. So what was the issue or the issues that federally you thought, no, this is where I could use my voice?
Yeah, I think for me, it is obviously environmental causes. And there is so much confusion about, which levels of government support, which initiatives. And those service level, like anything service level, is typically provincial because they're closer to, the provinces, and the provincial ministries are going to be closer to the people than, Ottawa. So when you look at the federal initiatives and what's happening and the decisions that are being made, they're a little bit more like broad. They're a bigger picture in some ways. So environmental practices, that's one that is huge for me. And this one really hits home, which is exporting of bulk water and the potential for bulk water exports to the United States. And I think people look at that as an issue of like, well, we do have so much fresh water in Canada. Why wouldn't we support? And I know that right now that conversation,
it's a little bit touchy right now.
It's a little bit touchier right now, but
that makes it even more important.
It makes it even more important. Yeah. But at the end of the day, like, the Green Party supports the banning of bulk water exports. And that does not mean that we're not supporting people who are suffering from drought in the United States. What that stops is corporations who are trying to commodify water, to stop them from doing that, because water is a basic human right. We should not be commodifying something like water. I mean, like, what's next? Are we going to commodify fresh air? So I think that, when it comes down to it, that one for me is very important. And here in Chilliwack, we have very intimate knowledge of, what happens when we sell our water to corporations. Why should a corporation be paying pennies on the dollar compared to what, a Chilliwack resident is paying for their fresh water? So that is something that I feel very passionate about. And it's something that the Green Party supports fully. So that's, I would say, one policy that I would be excited to dive deeper into and, hopefully make some changes somehow.
Okay. Well, that's fantastic. Is there, anything that we haven't touched on that you want people to know, either about you or the Green Party in general, that we haven't covered? Yeah,
I think, something that I think people find surprising, especially if they've only known me for a few years and they've known me in my Piquico era and my downtown Chilliwack Market era, is and I thought this is actually where you were going with the last question, is my background. So there's a lot of I think, preconceived notions about, the types of people who run for the Green Party or who support the Green Party. And while I might seem like very like left leaning as far as like environmental initiatives and all of that, and obviously like human rights and everything else, I support. There is also this level of like, use the word like patriotic like side of me. I was in the Army Reserves, and I worked in law enforcement, and I was a truck driver once upon a time, and I would say that those experiences and working in those industries gives me a little bit of a connection with a different segment of the population than maybe your typical Green Party candidate, and what I hope that people get from that and see is that I really do want to and can represent a wide variety of people. When you talked earlier about the echo chamber, I think it's really important that, I'm not just listening to people who are environmental advocates. I want to hear from people who have different points of views, and find out where the common ground is, because at the end of the day, we all have common ground. And if what's happening in the United States has shown us anything, it's that Canadians can come together again. And I think that's so important. The pandemic really split us apart in a way that just wasn't good for us as a nation. And what I see right now is people coming back together and supporting Canadian businesses and supporting each other and figuring out, how we can be unified as a country. And I think that that's a really positive thing. I don't see anything negative about that. Obviously, I want things to settle down on this tariff war. But seeing Canadians coming together again is definitely something that gives me hope.
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. I think that's a great place to wrap up. Thank you for discussing the tensions and the different ways that you're stepping up and the different things that you can offer as far as perspective and lens. For our viewers, though, do not forget, April 28th is your opportunity to use your voice if you haven't already. So be sure to make time to vote, make a plan, bring a friend or 5, and good luck in the election, and happy voting.